Hello and welcome back to Salute Your Sports. Kamen and Chef here with Tom Castleman, ready for an awesome show. It's our mid to really late NBA Finals preview slash recap. By the way, the boys here picked the Thunder in six. That could still happen, although the Pacers might have a thing or two to say about that in Game 6. It's been a very exciting series. Kind of like, I hate to say toot my horn, but I expected it to be more competitive than many thought. A lot of folks said the Thunder will cruise in this series. The Pacers have fought tooth and nail. Even the games they've lost, there was maybe one game where it was an absolute blowout. I mean, this last game, Indiana was leading entering the fourth quarter, so it was a abysmal fourth quarter. Last few minutes, especially for the Pacers, but they were in this game most of the way. So it has been a very competitive series, gone, about as good as we can expect. Obviously, a game winner with 0.3 seconds, a 15-point comeback in game one. That was very dramatic. We've had moments where we've seen SGA play like the MVP that he was this season. So overall, a pretty good series so far, Tom. I cannot wait to get started breaking down these finals and making our final predictions. Recording on a Wednesday night, by the way, June 18th, with Game 6 being Thursday night, June 19th. And then if there's a Game 7, that'll be on Sunday. Cannot wait to get started. How are you doing today, Tom?
I'm doing fantastic, and I am enjoying the everything that this series has given us to offer. I was somebody who's a little bit pessimistic, and getting a little bit of my comeuppance. Where like you, I said 6 games, but that felt like the diplomatic answer. I felt if I had to pick one or the other, an over and under, if you would, I would have shaded more toward the 5 side of things. But really, that's just flying in the face of evidence that we have now seen with this series of the Indiana Pacers consistently showing up in series where they don't belong or they don't present themselves as being a kind of a requisite competitor in a series for some reasons that we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show, and giving some really good games, even the games where you have some double digit conclusions. The games have been pretty even and back and forth, and the thing that Indiana has done really well, really both teams have done this well, but Indiana, given that they're the underdog at this point, being down 3 games to 2, is that they've never let any of these games feel uncompetitive for a lengthy stretch of time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, going into game one, it was one of those games where you think to yourself, okay, OKC, they've got like a pretty hefty lead. And then Indiana does what they've done in every series pretty much this entire playoffs, which is in the fourth quarter, in the crunch time, pulling out a miraculous comeback where the Thunder just kind of feel like, hey, we should be up by a lot. I mean, that was the game where in the first half they had like double-digit turnovers or something like that, the Pacers did, and that they still came back and they won that game. It went from an, oh no, here we go, this could even be a 4-game series, to Indiana saying, no, we belong here too. So it's been, I think, pretty entertaining theater from start to finish so far on the series. I do have some concerns, as we'll get on into the show, about this ending with that same level of aplomb, but that's because, of course, Tyrese Halliburton, the arguable best player for the Pacers, certainly the highest Q rating, if you would, having, I believe it was a hamstring injury or something along those
Calf.
lines, a leg injury, calf injury, thank you,
Calf strain.
where he's gone in for an MRI and is a game time decision. Certainly is going to be something to watch heading into Game 6.
Yeah, I think one of the things we had written down, you kind of already hit on it. We'll get to Game 6 in a little bit. I just kind of want to go over, like, how did the Pacers get off to this 2-1 start?
Mm-hmm.
What was the key to their success? I think you kind of hit on a lot of it, so I'll kind of piggyback off of that. Obviously, clutch play, role players. I mean, Game 1 was just like a typical Pacers resilience game. They trailed by 15 in the fourth quarter. They come back to win as they have all playoffs long. Double-digit deficits in the fourth against the Knicks. Down, late against the Bucks, had that crazy comeback. They had 25 turnovers. SGA had 38 points in game one. If you told the average person out there 25 turnovers for the Pacers, 38 points from the MVP. You would have thought Thunder win by double digits, but no, not so fast. The Pacers came back. They led for 0.3 seconds of the game. They trailed pretty much the whole game except for tip-off. 0.3 seconds in the lead. By the way, Tom, which is kind of wild to think about this, that was the latest game-winning shot in a finals game since Michael Jordan's buzzer beater in the 97 NBA Finals.
Wow.
It was game one of the 97 Finals. Jordan hits a buzzer beater to win the game. Of course, his last shot against the Jazz was with like 5 or 6 seconds left, so not a buzzer beater. So we actually haven't had a true buzzer beater since the 1997 NBA Finals to win a game. So Tyrese Halliburton with 0.3 seconds. I mean, Pacers in that game was all about the three-pointers too. 18 of 39 threes. The Thunder made 11 of 30, shot under 40% overall. That Indiana defense was all over OKC in game one. But all about balance. That's the story about the Pacers. You talk about Tyrese Halliburton. If the Pacers can somehow pull off this NBA championship, which again, unlikely, but theoretically, whether you're going to go with Tyrese Halliburton or Pascal Siakam, which is a whole other debate in its own, because Siakam's their best scorer, Halliburton's their best assister. They're both pretty close, apples and oranges. Maybe Tyrese is a little bit better, but I'm thinking of I'm thinking in my head, two guys come to mind, being the best player, the worst player to ever win a finals for their team. It's either Chauncey Billups or Tyrese Halliburton. That's it, Tom. I'm thinking about the history of basketball. There's always been some sort of mega superstar. We'll talk about Tyrese Halliburton and superstar status, whether he's on that tier later in the show. But that's the key for Indiana. Not a single player had 20 points in game one, but they had 7 guys with 9 points or more. Game two, the Thunder bounced back as expected. Nobody thought the Thunder would lose 2 games at home. So even 1-1. Game three, though, same story. The Pacers bench, the Pacers depth. Benedict Mathurin had 27 points off the bench. TJ McConnell, 10 points, 5 assists, and 5 steals. He has been out of this world in the series coming off the bench. So Halliburton was better in that game, 1 rebound away from a triple-double. But that 2-1 lead, why did Indiana get off to that hot start? It was all about the role players, all about the Mathurins, the McConnells of the world. They have, even like Nemhart. They have so many, whether it be bench players or like 3rd, 4th, 5th guys in their starting lineup. This is a truly deep team, and they don't care who does it. Nobody on the team cares as long as the job gets done. So obviously the Pacers behind their depth, playing better than the Thunder bench, outplaying the Thunder secondary and tertiary players. That is why the Pacers were up 2-1 in this series. And now let's talk about why did the Thunder win the last 2, because this was actually the first time the Pacers have lost back-to-back games since March 6th and March 10th. So the college basketball tournament hadn't even started the last time the Pacers lost 2 straight. So how did the Thunder turn it around and win back-to-back games the last 2 games, Tom?
Yeah, it's been really all about the star players. It's kind of this fun little contrast for the Thunder versus the Pacers, where in game 4 you had that incredible fourth quarter from SGA, coupled with some mistakes from Indiana and some untimely ones at that. But you had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander absolutely taking over that fourth quarter in game 4 to balance out the series, and really a game where for a lot of it, it felt like the Pacers could actually take that game, take that commanding 3-1 lead, and kind of felt like that's where the series turned a little bit, because in game 5, we go to another star player with the OKC Thunder and Jalen Williams, who put up 40 points. And I would say, like, looking at how he got a lot of those baskets, it wasn't necessarily like your traditional thinking of like a Kyrie Irving, a LeBron James, a Kobe Bryant, a Michael Jordan iso ball type of performance. He was doing a lot off the ball, cutting to the basket, getting out on breakaways, basically doing the little things to get those points and being hyper efficient, taking 25 shots from the field, hitting 14 of them, and really just having an outstanding game all around. I mean, one turnover on that game was absolutely phenomenal with his performance. And then you still have, the compliment. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, don't want to knock him. He also had 31 points in Game 5, which is
And
going to
10
be
assists.
and 10 assists, exactly, a good amount of them to Jalen Williams. So I think it was really that in Games 4 and 5, they're two stars. They're two big stars because, Chet Holmgren was kind of like the third guy, still after a year of injury, working his way into form, it feels like at times. But it was really on those two guys kind of not necessarily overcoming the balance because the rest of the Thunder team has been really strong as well. But something that I've seen or at least felt in this series is that whenever Shea goes out of the game, the offense kind of feels a little bit gummed up without him on the court because he's a really good distributor, but also he's a good isolation player as well as far as being able to get his own shot, being able to get himself to the line. And it feels like sometimes that's lacking a little bit. It feels like that's not necessarily the strongest suit for Jalen Williams' game, but there's not necessarily somebody who can really replicate that for the Thunder. So really it's about these stars, finding their balance. If you want to say that SGA does a little bit of foul hunting or something along those lines,
The
got to the
first
line
guy to
shot.
get a free throw right off a jump ball or something. I saw the
Yeah,
funny thing they're
incredible
saying
stuff.
online.
Yeah, like he's been really good in that regard too, because that's where it's okay. The clock is stopped. Everybody gets a breather. Going to slow the pace, control the pace a little bit more because both teams want to run up and down the court. I feel that that the Thunder do a little bit better than the Pacers when it's that slower, grinded out type of pace. But another key in Game 5 that's a bit unfortunate is the injury with Tyrese Halliburton, him not being as available throughout that game, and even when he was available, not really quite himself. And because he's not a score first player, sometimes it takes a while for him to show up in the box sheet. But I think this was a case where, as the game went on, you could kind of feel a little bit of that, not necessarily pace, but maybe control of the game slipping for India. I'm talking kind of not necessarily like hard and fast statistics. It's more of a feel thing in watching it. But
Yeah.
that's how the Thunder have been able to take games 4 and 5 to really take a commanding lead and perhaps close this one out on the road.
Yeah, I've got similar stuff. I'll hit on a little bit on the Pacers' struggles as well. Obviously, Jalen Williams, I mean, he had 27 points in game 4 and
Mhm.
40 points in game 5. And let's be honest, say what you will about Halliburton or Siakam, but the second best player in the series is Jalen Williams. He is hands down the second best player. I think if they replay this series, Tom, we would see the same thing. The Thunder right now are the two best players in the series, and it is extremely rare where the two best players in a series where they're playing like it that you lose the series. Sure, once in a while that second guy has an off series, things can happen. But they have the two best players in the series and they're playing like it. They're
Mhm.
playing like the two best players in the series. So Jalen Williams, I mean, 33 and a half points the last two games. SGA, by the way, 35 points, 31 points. 33, 34 points. You're getting two guys that are averaging more than 30 a game. SGA with 10 assists as well. The defense, though, has been big, too. 104 points and 109 points the last two games for the Pacers, which is well off their season average. The team that's used to putting up 115, 120, on a hot night, 130. The fact that they're getting low 100s, that's a really good sign for the Thunder, for sure. I think obviously game 5 there was injuries, but it's one of those things. The more I watch the Indiana Pacers and the more I watch Tyrese Halliburton play, I hate to say this, Tom, the
Mm.
less I like it. The more I buy into this most overrated player in the NBA, which is Spears voted him on. He's extremely clutch, but he's a guy that the first 3 quarters oftentimes doesn't do much. For example, in game 4, he had 18 points. 18 points, 7 assists, 2 rebounds. Box score looks okay, not great, not bad. If you watch that game, he was virtually non-existent the first 3 quarters. He had 8 of those points in the fourth quarter, but even his ability to set up his teammates, just his ability to make it feel like in my opinion, I feel like when you watch a basketball game and you're determining who the star player is, you should know. I mean, like Steve Nash back in the day, he wasn't scoring 30 a game for the Suns. You look at Magic Johnson, more of a 20 a game guy, 10 assists. Like, you can tell who the general was. And watching this series, and this is even before the Game 5 injury, I can't tell that. I don't feel that way with Halliburton. I think he's got good percentages, but to me, he's one of the most interesting cases in the history of basketball. Really, history of basketball, because it seems like when the moment is biggest, he's not afraid to shoot. It feels like the first 3 quarters, he's afraid to shoot. There's a lack of aggressiveness. There's a lack of a feel for the game. There's a lack of confidence. And, I'll get into this a little bit later about the all-time greats, which obviously he's not an all-time great. But you look at a lot of the star players, the guys that played through injuries, like the Michael Jordan flu game, Brett Favre played with a million injuries. Some of these mega stars, when they're hurt, they find a way to contribute anyway. They don't lose the confidence. As soon as he got injured in Game 5, he was so afraid to shoot. I mean, he was having open shots, passing them up, ruining the flow of the offense, where to the point where it's like TJ McConnell was the better option at the time. And that to me kind of rubs me wrong that that's your superstar player and he has no way to impact the game, even with, the smallest of injuries. So I think obviously Game 5, I will give him a little bit of a pass given the injury, but a big key is Game 4 and Game 5, Tyrese Halliburton did not play well, and that did not bode well for the Pacers because when you've got 1 or 2 superstars and the guy that's supposed to run your team is not playing well, very, very hard. So they lost by 11 points too in Game 5. He had 4 points and no field goals. So you're normally scoring 17 to 18 a game. If he does what he normally does, they're winning this series right now. 22 turnovers, by the way, for the Pacers in Game 5 did not help. They got to take care of the ball, which part of that is on Halliburton. He's the point guard. He runs the offense. Got to make sure your whole team is taking care of the ball. Game 1, they got away with it. Not in Game 5. Way too many turnovers for the Pacers. This whole series in general, they could be up in this series if not for the turnovers. And obviously, credit goes to SGA and Jalen Williams, but a little bit reckless, a little bit, uncharacteristic. And then we'll get into the next question, actually, about Tyrese Halliburton. So I'll have more stuff on that. I'll get your take on it. But definitely the last 2 games, Halliburton not playing as good. Turnovers on the offense. And obviously the Thunder Stars playing really, really, really good.
Absolutely, yeah. And also a little bit more macro on the whole series is, one of my keys coming into this was 3-point percentage and how the Pacers are hitting at about a 40% clip. They came in Game 1, shot I believe it was 45, 46 from beyond the arc. On the whole series, though, 36.5%. So that's something where you see that kind of that variance coming back in line as a pretty significant key for a good defensive team in the OKC Thunder as well. And yeah, to kind of talk about Tyrese Halliburton, kind of what his status or stature is in the league as of right now.
Not a top 15 player in the NBA. Would you agree? Not a top 15 player in the NBA.
I would say that, from that traditional sense of, just putting up his own points and everything along those lines, it feels like he can do it, but it also feels like he's trying to operate within the system of the offense as well. And I think that's actually better suited for him. If I had a comparison for Tyrese Halliburton, not the same caliber, but the same kind of category, is kind of like a Jason Kidd, right? Where Jason Kidd, good rebounder, amazing passer, could
Jason
score when
Kidd,
he needed to.
Way better rebounder than Halliburton, and still a way better passer that's in control of the offense.
Not the same level.
Not to mention later in his career, Jason Kidd was a considerably better shooter too. Uh
That's something they can develop for Halliburton. What I'm saying
I'm
is that
struggling. Jason
when
Kidd was a beast. He was a
when
walking
Jason
triple double, Tom. That is blasphemy and
not
disrespectful toward Jason
blasphemy.
Kidd. I'll give you one that's more like Tyrese Halliburton. Tony Parker. That's a more fair comparison. That's a
I don't
more
think
fair
Tony Parker is
comparison.
as good a rebounder as Tyrese Halliburton
He's
is.
a
I
better
think like
shooter, though.
my comparison with like my whole like in the same kind of like type of player for Halliburton and Kidd is that you look at Kidd and those finals teams that he had with the Nets. I mean, he had a Kenyon Martin, he had a Richard Jefferson to go to, and it doesn't necessarily feel like the Pacers have that great one-on-one player. It feels like if they decided, hey, we're going to make this big move and let's just say trade for Kevin Durant in the offseason type of thing. That's what would put, I think, Halliburton into his best scenario where he can hit those big shots in the big moments, but it feels like he's a better player when he is deferring to a go-to score, and it feels like Indiana just doesn't necessarily have that. So I think that this is less about Tyrese Halliburton and is he not consistently good enough to be a superstar. I think that on again Q rating, everybody knows who he is. I think he is a star. I think that he's a really really good player and would make a lot of teams better. I just feel like on balance, the Pacers have a little bit of just an overall talent deficit. That if you put one more star player on that team, they've done remarkably well with the aggregate that they have. But with one more star player on the team, I think that would actually even elevate Halliburton's own game himself because he would have another star player to play off of, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No.
So it's a little bit nebulous where I'm going with this one. I think that as far as his overall, he is whelmed for this series. I don't think he's necessarily overperformed or underperformed. There have been times within games that he disappeared. I mean, Richard Jefferson had those comments in game one about your best player can't be doing, I think it was like tour dates or something like that in game one. And then what happened in the fourth quarter? Tyrese Halliburton showed up and put it all out there. He's had moments, he's had periods in games where he's gone in and out. And I feel like to be a true, like you're saying, top 15, top of the line superstar, you have to be on the entire time. But I also don't necessarily know if that's his style per se, if that's the type of superstar, the type of star that Tyrese Halliburton is meant to be when he's at his personal best.
Yeah, I mean, look, everything you just said makes a lot of sense. Everything you just said is 100% true. And the truth is, like, Tyrese Halliburton is more of a traditional point guard. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where it's a little different where the games are. Because, like, he is more in the sense of a Jason Kidd where he's more of a passing point guard. Although, looking at the numbers, Jason Kidd considerably more rebounds a game in his career. Jason Kidd averaged 6.3 rebounds for his career. Tyrese Halliburton 3.7, and he's going to get less at the end of his
Oh,
career. So, as far as the rebounding side of things and the defensive side of things, Jason Kidd was a lockdown defender. So, again, I would say J Kidd considerably better
oh, of
rebounder,
course, yeah.
triple double
That's a
threat
Hall
than
of Famer,
Halliburton.
yeah.
But as far as scoring and assisting, yeah, I mean, he's more of a traditional point guard, which, again, the game evolves. I think in the era of Jason Kidd, there weren't as many scoring point guards. Like, could Jason Kidd have evolved his game to become a better scorer than he was? Maybe, because you look at what he did at the end of his career, he got considerably better at shooting threes at the end of his career. So maybe he would have done
Mm-hmm.
that. I think probably during Jason Kidd's prime, I mean, it's very hard to win a championship when you don't have a top five player in the league. So Jason Kidd maybe was top five briefly, but he wasn't consistently a top five player. Like Tyrese Halliburton, you're not going to win a championship if Tyrese Halliburton is your best player. That's the problem for the Pacers. And you're not going to win unless there's a guy that is considerably expected to be the top scorer over him. Because Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Halliburton, they're fairly close in points per game. Pascal might be getting a little bit more, especially in these playoffs, but there's not a clear go-to guy on the Indiana Pacers as far as
Mm-hmm.
scoring the ball. And that's part of the problem. So if you want to have a championship team, you need Tyrese Halliburton to be your second best player. I mean, this year, Siakam 20.2 points, Halliburton 18.6. I mean, neither one of these guys, I guess Siakam had 24 a game in 22-23, but I think that was when he was literally the only option on the Raptors at the time. It is very hard to win in the modern NBA with pace and everything when your leading scorer can't get you at least 25 points a game. It was different in Jason Kidd's era, to be fair.
Mhm.
A little different eras, a little different styles. But yeah, I think the problem with him, though, it's kind of like you said, Tom, the feel for the game. Because like watching a guy like Jason Kidd, you felt like he was in control the whole time. Maybe not with the scoring, but he was running the game as a point guard. Halliburton's assists might be similar to Kidd. Obviously, like there's more pace these days, assists per possession, stuff like that. It's going to favor Jason Kidd. If you look at the sheer amount of assists per game, sheer box score, yeah, it might look similar, but I think it's just one of those things where you know it when you see it. And I really feel like having watched this series, there is just random possessions and moments where, to me, he's a non-factor. And I have no problem if you put Tyrese Halliburton as, one of the worst all-stars, right around that 17 to 20 range. He's a good basketball player. Being top 20 in the world is no shade, right? He made the Olympic team. Given it's the USA team, he never played in the Olympic team. We saw it. He was 12th, 13th, 14th guy on that team. That's fair, and that's really good. He's just not a superstar. And I think, with all the clutch shots he's hit, there's this sort of narrative to label him a superstar. He is not a superstar, Tom. Superstar to me is somebody that what they're going to do. And to me, it's a little inconsistent. Like Jason Kidd, he was getting 13, 14, 15 points a game, but you knew you were going to get that along with the assists, the rebounds, and the defense. Tyrese Halliburton, one game might get 4 points. He might get 11 points. He might get 30 points. He might get 35. He might get 10. I never know what the heck I'm going to get out of him. And it's very hard to be consistent, very hard to be on every single game. But most superstars in the NBA, you have a pretty good idea of what you're going to get from them. Even on an off night, SGA will get to the line. He'll get some points the easy way. Jokic, he'll get a bunch of rebounds. Mm-hmm. It's what he does. But when Tyrese Halliburton's off, I don't know what I'm going to get from him. And that, to me, bothers me a little bit. And I think, like, if he wants to be the guy that he wants to be, he has to improve. Because he has potential. I just see kind of a little bit of fear in his game. The fear to take over what people call the killer instinct that Michael Jordan has. Tyrese Halliburton does not have the killer instinct, Tom. Very good player, not a superstar, and the only way the Pacers can win the finals is if he plays like a superstar, which he definitely is not.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty solid argument. I mean, now I'm doing like a little bit of a rabbit hole wanting to see what some of Tyrese Halliburton's most similar players are. So that's something I'll keep doing off to the side a little bit as we are on the show. But
keep in mind, era adjusted. So like Jason Kidd played in the late 90s, early 2000s, where the NBA scoring was considerably lower. The pace was considerably slower. So obviously got to adjust where the Pacers play with an extremely fast pace. So if we strictly look at points per game and assists per game, his numbers on a per pace, per play basis are not like, his numbers will always look a little bit better than they are. That's the way I'm trying to say it, Tom. That's just the way they're going to look when you have X amount of possessions. I mean, Indiana Pacers play with a ton of pace, and he gets a lot of like garbage time moments. Like if you look at like game 4 where he scored a bunch of layups late, like he seems to like, I hate to make this comparison because, I'm not a fan of this guy, but he makes the clutch plays in the close games, but it seems like a lot of the other moments are kind of like sort of stat patty to me. Like there was a game where he had like 6 points and he ended up with 15 points, and he scored a bunch of points in the fourth quarter where he just got layups when they're down like 8 points, you know? It's like when you know it, when you watch it, you see it, you feel the it factor, and I don't feel that with Tyrese Halliburton having watched the finals, Tom. Same way with Jason Tatum. Another guy that's obviously Jason Tatum is a better player than Tyrese Halliburton, puts up really good numbers, but it's one of those things where you just watch it and you think to yourself, how are these numbers where they are? Tatum's another example of a guy that I personally like. You think of players, you know how much I love stats. I think of guys that are better than stats and guys that are worse than their stats. I think Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton are guys that are worse than what the stats will show you, in my opinion, Tom Castleman. The guy that's better than his stats, the number one guy better than his stats right now in the NBA, Stephen Curry. And it proves, with the Warriors' number one offense efficiency when he's on the floor, the lowest offensive efficiency when he's off the floor. So one of those stats beyond the stats type thing.
Would you like to take a little detour to see the similarity scores according to Basketball Reference?
Sure. They're going to be with some really good players. Isaiah Thomas, again, different era, different field, different player. But I'm sure the numbers will look similar with Tyrese Halliburton and Isaiah Thomas, for example.
So similar scores, and this is going to be through the first 4 years of a career.
Sure.
And this is for most similar performance arc through 4 seasons. The most similar player to Tyrese Halliburton is Allen Iverson.
Yeah. Who, by the way, I also have on my overrated list, in case you're wondering, field goal percentage. Very
Bob
good player, but a little overhyped in my opinion.
Celtics legend Bob Cousy is the third most similar player.
Okay.
Fifth most similar player, Kirk Heinrich.
Okay.
And then common, great call on your part, number 6 on the list, Tony Parker.
Yeah.
Number 7, Luka Doncic. And let's see, there's Hersey.
Wait, who was number 2? I missed when you said number 2.
Number 2 was Andy Phillip. I'm not familiar with Andy Phillip. There's also Vern Fleming and then on this list. And then to round it out, there's a Hersey Hawkins, Phil Smith, and Eddie Johnson. So
Hersey Hawkins played for, I think, the Nets and the Hornets.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I liked it because Hersey was close enough to Hershey that as a kid I was just like, I kind of like that type of player.
Give me the candy, baby.
Exactly, yeah. All about the standard, classic Hershey bar. I think that's my favorite of the Hershey products.
Yum.
But anyway, that's not why anybody tuned into this program.
Hey,
so
I'm a Reese's guy, but that's just me. Hershey's is up there, though. One of the top candy bars as well.
If we were to do a candy draft, Reese's has several entries that would be making it onto the list.
And Twix. But anyway, we digress. Twix,
we
Kit Kat, Reese's, Hershey's. There's your Mount Rushmore. You're welcome, Tom.
Our blood sugar's flagging a little bit, evidently. So let's move on to Game 6 of the finals. So we're probably going to be in lockstep on this one. And I would go so far as to say that I would be on lockstep regardless on if Tyrese Halliburton was completely healthy versus the fact that he's a game time decision. If he doesn't go, it makes it even more of a open and shut case, quote unquote. It makes it an easier pick to have the Thunder winning Game 6. Certainly, Indiana has, at this point, would not surprise me if they pushed it to a Game 7 with the way that they have that home court advantage, with the way that Caitlin Clark it just absolutely cranks the T-shirt promo and just sends it into whatever she's sending it. There's a still image of her where she was winding up and she was going to chuck it. But anyway, it wouldn't surprise me if this went to Game 7, but I feel fairly comfortable and confident saying Thunder in 6. It feels like they may have figured something out in Games 4 and 5 where they're really, really settled into who and what they are. We've seen the other role players stepping up. Lou Dort with that high arcing 3-point shot. Alex Caruso, of course, has had a very good series as well. I think that the Thunder are just kind of gelling at this point where they know they're good. And what we could be seeing, and this is more of a retrospective think piece, but we could be seeing in the moment a team of young players, really talented young players, figuring out that they're good, kind of that Neo in the Matrix moment where it clicks for him,
Mm-hmm.
and then he takes his talent to an entirely different level where it goes from being a struggle to being, the apex of what he is. I think we might be seeing that with the Thunder, and I think that not going to be a cakewalk necessarily, but I think that they're going to be able to win this one on the road in six, as dissatisfying as that would be for the OKC fans that have also, by the way, had a phenomenal home court advantage throughout the playoffs and have been a really, really fun crowd to watch as well.
Yeah, I think the OKC fans would rather take Game 6 and not have to worry about Game 7.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that's, unless you're one of those guys that really wants a Game 7 experience, you're buying a ticket. That might be a
Sure.
little different. But if you're an OKC fan that will not drop tons of money to go to Game 7, you're definitely hoping it's going to end in 6. I'm a lot less confident than you, Tom.
Mm,
Personally, I've went back and forth on this one. I've grappled with myself. As much as I love being right, because I love being right, you know me. We both
of
picked,
course.
Pacers in 6, or excuse me, Thunder in 6. Give our show credibility, but my heart wants it to go to 7. I want to be wrong. I really want the Pacers to win Game 6. There's nothing like a Game 7 in sports.
Hmm.
I do think this Pacers bunch, we've learned to expect the unexpected with them. I think that raucous home crowd in Indiana is going to be absolutely wild. I think, these guys, again, playing with the nothing to lose attitude. We talked about it in the finals, pre-finals preview we did on the show. And I personally said the one area the Pacers have a massive advantage in, it's the fact that they are the underdog. They have the massive, play without the fear to lose. I think that's going to come out in Game 6, kind of like a last ride for the fans. I expect TJ McConnell to be big.
Hmm.
I like Neesmith. I have a feeling about him knocking down some 3-pointers. They get that 3-point shot going, they have a fighter's chance. Originally, Tom, I was going to go bold. I have it written down, the Pacers win Game 6, but I think my heart's too into it. I'm going to try to reason myself out, pull myself back a little bit, and I'm going to pick the Thunder to win a game, win a good Game 6. I don't expect a blowout. I don't expect a 10, 15 point win. I do think, though, the last few games, what we've seen from the Thunder is they feel a lot more calm, a lot more composed in these close games, because I don't think the
Hmm.
Pacers have been phenomenal at all these close games. And my running thought was, look, who's more likely to win a blowout? The Thunder. But if it's a close game at the end of the game, Indiana maybe has the edge. But the way the Thunder have played in the fourth quarter, last couple games, that edge to me seems to be dwindling. So
Yeah.
I do think the Thunder will win. I do think, their superstar SGA will deliver. So I do like the Thunder in 6, but I really could see it going either way. As a fan of the game, strictly as a fan, I really do hope it goes to 7. Should be an
Hmm.
awesome, awesome game. But yes, I'll be boring. We'll agree. The Thunder win in 6 games. And MVP, I have this written down next. I think the last part is the most interesting part of our whole show, in my opinion. Save the best for last.
Mm,
The legacy
yes.
of SGA and what it means to this point as a Thunder player. I'll get to that in a little bit, though. Let's talk about who's going to win the MVP. I think it's SGA. I think it's pretty
Hmm.
straightforward. I mean, he's the leading scorer in this series right now. Also, the most assists for the Thunder. Jalen Williams has a teeny tiny outside shot, given he's been phenomenal last couple games, but it would really take a lot from, him to put up like 50 and SGA drops like 10, which, by the way, I don't know if you remember, I think it was at 2017 or 2018. Now, there was one of the years where Durant won the MVP and Curry was better the whole series. He was the front runner of the whole series. Then the deciding game of the series, Curry had like a 1 for 11 on threes, and Durant puts up 40 and gets the game-winning shot. Literally, like, if we're doing MVP for the whole series, Curry should have been the finals MVP, but
Hmm.
he kind of choked it away, and Durant came in at the end to steal that finals MVP.
And
Like,
thus a vendetta was born.
yeah, right? I mean, for real, though, that's what it was. Their numbers at the end of the series were almost identical. Durant was slightly better, but if you take out that one game in that series, Curry was the best player in the series as a whole. So that I could see that possibly, but then again, like I highly doubt SGA is going to have a game that bad. The guy is really, really good right now. And, this is what we're talking about. We'll get to the legacy thing. But, we have the first tier superstars and the second tier superstars, right? But a lot of the respect of being a first tier superstar, you need two things to be considered a first tier superstar consistently, not a 1 year wonder, not a once thing here. You need an MVP and you need a finals. SGA got the MVP, and now he's got the finals. This would put him a little bit ahead of Luka, who's knocking on his door, ahead of Devin Booker. I mean, close. They're all similar, but you look at the guys that he's fighting for, top 5 player in the league, top 5 player of the next generation, with the MVP and the finals MVP. Jason Tatum didn't win the finals MVP. Maybe he's deserved it, maybe he didn't, but he didn't win it. SGA would be ahead of Tatum, ahead of Doncic, ahead of Devin Booker. I mean, he would be ahead of all these guys in this next generation. I mean, I think Giannis is a little bit older. He's close.
Giannis is 30. I think SGA is 25, 26.
That's what I'm saying. So
like that, yeah.
I still think Giannis might be slightly ahead of him overall, but are they even the same generation? Like, I don't know, because Giannis is older. And in 4 or 5 years, Giannis loses a little bit of athleticism. I don't know if he's built to be, the same player in 5 years from now. So this really puts him, though, with Giannis, with Jokic, with that top tier superstars. I mean, you could argue he already was, a bona fide first year superstar, given he won the MVP. But this just about solidifies it for him, where you can't have a top 5 player in the NBA list without having him on it. Because you've heard me say this many times on the show. The NBA is full of superstars. The 8th best player and the 2nd best player in the NBA, believe it or not, Tom, the gap is very, very small. I'm not saying it's massive. A lot of these guys are the same tier, but I think, backing up the finals MVP in regards to also having the league MVP, it puts him in that discussion where you can't have a top 5 list and not have him on it. And I think of basketball's 5 players on the court. Tier 1 superstar to me, Tom, is a top 5 player in the game. He was already arguably this, but this solidifies it where it's not really a debate for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fairly clear-cut to be the MVP, and that kind of leads into a fun little discussion about the Thunder and the legacy. And we'll keep it to the Thunder because we could go back to the Supersonic days and all that good stuff. But we'll stick Thunder because it's one pretty recent and gives us some very contemporary comparisons that we can look at. Because really, Kevin Durant is probably the first superstar that people would associate with the Thunder. Because he initially was with the CLC Supersonics for 1 year before they became the Oklahoma City Thunder. Of course, you have, James Harden was a key 6th man for them. Of course, Russell Westbrook was there for a long period. He outlasted Durant and Harden and got to an NBA Finals, had a couple different playoff runs, kind of went with some ups and downs as a team. But we're talking about a couple of guys that also, we're talking about 3 guys now that have won MVPs with the Thunder. So I think that, Thunder winning a title, that has to be a key differentiator for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander if we're talking about, who's the most thundering Thunder, whatever you want to call it. I think
the
that
greatest
puts him
Thunder of them all.
Exactly. Like, I think that puts him a notch above Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, which it'd be interesting if we did the whole, put each of them in their prime or what have you. I think on talent, it would go Durant 1, pretty close SGA and Russell 1 and 2. if we're talking, prime of each of their games. But
Give me SGA. You know how I stand over
of
Russell
course, no, I
Westbrook.
know how you're going to go on that one.
Yeah.
But I think that winning the title does give Shea Gilgeous-Alexander that extra little bump in legacy as far as being Mr. Thunder, if you will, over the other two players. So even if it's not necessarily talent based, and I think that there's certainly a lot of room for him to grow and continue to become um, the face of the franchise in the modern era of the franchise, because I mean he's going to get locked up under a pretty massive contract. He's still a young enough player, and this is a young enough and talented enough team that this could be a 2, 3, a multiple championship team over the next 5, 10 years of a window. They absolutely have everything that they need to get back to win another one, maybe another two. I mean, that's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah.
But I think that each of them having an MVP, and now Alexander getting that title, I think that puts him probably just a skosh above right now, with only more room to go. Unless, of
Yeah, I
course, Kevin
think
Durant comes back to the Thunder next year, and then they win it, and then they have a Thunder off. But I don't know. That's a
for
different show that we can talk
for
about
for the
there.
sake of, which would be so interesting if he comes back to the Thunder, given
Hmm.
how much the fans have hated on him. And I think we'll see a similar thing as LeBron coming back to the Cavs. They'll welcome him back all of a sudden.
If you
Problem with
win,
Durant,
yes.
though, is he can't stay healthy. So that's his biggest problem. He's a phenomenal player, but the last couple of years, there's a lot of health concerns for Kevin Durant. Look, I'm going to keep this to this year only, because
Hmm.
I don't think this Thunder team may not be a dynastic team, because I think we're seeing so much longevity and so much parity in the NBA. But I think it's safe to say, given his age and given how young his teammates are, if you had to pick, would they win a second title or no? I would say yes. That's the way I would lean. Given he's got another 10 years in his prime and maybe 15 years in his career, and there's some rumors about the Clippers trying to take him back with the mega deal. He was originally a Clipper, so
Hmm.
never say never in the NBA. But I feel like, especially if he wins a championship, that's going to make him more likely to stay in OKC. It is a different thing these days with social media. It's not so much the market that matters as much. You can market yourself in any place these days. Although that's the same thing we're saying about Giannis a couple years ago, and obviously from champion to kind of a Bucks team that has faded. Although I think this Thunder team is much more well built to last with their youth and young players. So
Hmm.
I'll give you a couple of resume points for all three of these guys. I'm keeping this simply. SGA wins the championship. Let's just pretend he never plays a game of basketball for the Thunder again. That's the way I'm going to keep this legacy thing, because I think it is a very, very legitimate and very, very close answer. So Durant, 8 years in OKC, one MVP, and we forget this, 4 scoring titles, by the way,
Hmm.
Kevin Durant. 11 years for Westbrook, one MVP, 2 scoring titles. 6 years for SGA, one MVP, 1 scoring title. I think if we were talking this based on regular season cumulative numbers, I
Sure.
would say that Durant was clearly number one, Westbrook two, and SGA three. But you got to factor in postseason for it.
Hmm.
And I think, like you said, Tom, whether it's fair or not, because, you know, the gut feeling in me as a sports journalist type, like, the best player that's ever played for the Thunder is Kevin Durant. Come on. He's the
Yes.
best player ever for the Thunder. That's the answer. He's the best Thunder player.
Hmm.
That's not the way anyone else is going to see it, though. When it comes to
Nope.
legacy,
Ring
everyone
culture.
remembers the guy that won them a championship. And winning that championship holds a lot of weight. So I think you ask the Thunder fans, they will tell you it's SGA. He's the guy that got us the championship. So
Hmm.
I think winning a championship would solidify him with the best overall legacy. But in my personal opinion, you know me, I'm not saying rings don't matter. Rings matter. They're important, but they're only part of the narrative for me. You know me, I think it's a
Yes.
team game. There's scoring, there's defense, there's clutch play, overall impact on the game. There's also like, this has to be adjusted for, eras and other teams in your era. I think obviously during, OKC's time, all due respect to the Pacers and, all these other teams the Thunder have beaten, but, Durant had to play LeBron and the Heat in his prime. He had to play the Warriors with Curry and Klay Thompson. I don't think these teams the Thunder are beating are at that level. It's hard to compare eras. I don't know if the Thunder would beat those teams. My gut instinct is no, but then again, I've been underestimating this team all year long, so I can't say for a fact that's the case. But the way the outside public will view it, the way the Thunder fans will view it, obviously, especially with the animosity towards Durant for leaving when he lost to the Warriors in the conference finals. They blew a 3-1 lead, which is another thing. Like, this may be unfair, but I think to some extent it is a little bit valid. I don't know if Kevin Durant is truly a leader. I don't know if he's the guy that inspires his teammates. Is he a leader of men? I mean, even those Warrior teams that he was winning on, Curry was the leader. He's the guy that they look to. He's the guy that makes everything flow. SGA does feel a little bit more of a leader to me than Durant, but again, this is hearsay from us looking at things outside. We don't know exactly how things are inside closed windows, but by sheer perception, we say this in sports, ring culture is a thing. So because he would have the championship, I ultimately agree SGA will be the best Thunder legacy of all time because he's the only superstar that has bling, bling, Tom Castleman. And I will say as far as this too, you want to go back to the Supersonic days, Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, Jack Sycamore way back in the day. He's the best player ever legacy-wise for the Sonics or the Thunder SGA. I think the Sonics last won a championship in like 70 or 71, which a lot of people that are watching the NBA today have no memories of those teams whatsoever, Tom Castleman.
Yeah, unfortunate to say, I don't know if I could name a single player from those teams.
Exactly.
From that team, rather.
Exactly. Ray Allen was a Supersonic too, though.
Counted more as a Supersonic or more as a Buck, do you think?
I think he played longer with the Bucks, but I believe his absolute best year ever, I think, was as a Supersonic. Ray Allen. Yeah. He was like
probably
scoring like 27 a game, I think. Let me look it up right now. I'm just out of curiosity on my phone. Ray Allen.
And then probably is most well known for his being part of that Big Three in Boston, winning a title there. Because again, winning that championship.
But I think like his peak of his career was with the Sonics, actually.
Yeah, because he went Bucks first, and then he was part of that trade that sent Gary Payton over to Milwaukee, and he went over to Seattle.
Well, his career high in a season for points, 26.4 as a Sonic.
Yep.
And then his second career high was
Rashard Lewis, I think.
Rashard Lewis was there, yeah. Also at 25.1, his second highest points per game average as a Sonic for Ray Allen. So, I mean, he was putting up, in his time with the Sonics, 25, 26 a game, which is, no joke, Tom Castleman, no joke whatsoever. So, anyway, really good show, man. Anything else you want to add about these finals or any other sports topics that randomly tickle your fancy you want to add on here?
I mean, it's fairly significant news in the NBA, but right before our show came online, breaking news that the Lakers are going to be having, they're going to be selling the majority stake of their franchise. It's valued at $10 billion, the highest valuation in sports to date. I am sure that a certain former oilman down in Texas might have a thing or two to say about the valuation of his franchise. Where
are you talking about Jerry?
I am talking
about them Cowboys.
Jerry Jones.
There's a documentary coming about the Cowboys in the 90s in Netflix. I can't wait to watch it. It's in August, Tom. It's going to be very, very intriguing. I have it on my must-watch documentary list.
A little bit of red meat heading into heading into the NFL season there for folks who don't quite get ginned up on preseason games. But yeah, I think that's like probably the biggest story in sports that was just breaking outside of the finals. Of course,
Oh,
Florida Panthers
Florida Panthers winning the
champions.
Stanley Cup in 6 games, as they predicted, by the way.
Yep, right over
Repeat,
the.
2 in a row,
Mhm.
back-to-back Stanley Cups for them, back-to-back times playing the Oilers, and they won them both. How about that? And very
Yeah,
impressive.
and Canada's drought for Lord Stanley's Cup continues.
Yes. Of course, you're watching the FIFA Club World Cup, I'm sure. No
Oh,
doubt about
yes,
that.
on wherever that channel can be found.
Yeah, right. But yeah, really, really good show. Always good catching up with you. I do next Wednesday. It is my dog's birthday, Messi, so I probably won't have a
Happy
chance to
birthday,
do a show.
Messi.
Happy birthday to Messi, named after the player Messi. But I know we'll probably take a brief hiatus during the summer. We'll probably catch up at some point. Maybe some NFL training camp stuff. Maybe some NBA trade deadline. Maybe some baseball All-Star break. Otani and
Hmm.
Judge just playing out of their world. Otani back on the mound. Only pitched
Indeed.
1 inning the other night, but that's exciting news as well as a sports fan. So we'll catch up when we catch up for the next show. Now, obviously, hoping to do more of these when the NFL season comes around, which, Tom, September 4th, I think is the opener.
Hmm.
So we're looking at about 2.5 months. Like, can
Somewhat
we
along those lines.
speed up the clock a little bit? Want the NFL? Looking forward to that. I think to me, it's like I love the NFL, but I love it most on the show too because it's a weekly thing. It's just so easy to talk about and so much fun. So a lot of fun months ahead. Cannot wait to talk to you again on the show whenever we talk to each other. But as always, a pleasure, Tom Castleman, doing the show with
Hmm.
you. And pleasure to all the people that watch and listen. You guys are the best. Have a great night, and we will see you soon.